Security and Policing, Rural and Maritime Development and Disaster Management, the Honorable Inia Seruiratu, to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Cabinet Ministers, Honorable Members of Parliament, and members of the public joining this Parliament session live through live stream channels. I rise to lend my support to the motion by the Honorable Prime Minister and to thank His Excellency the President for his most gracious speech on the occasion of the opening of the 2021-2022 Parliament session on the 22nd of November 2021. At the outset, I wish to congratulate His Excellency Ratu the President and our Commander-in-Chief, for his appointment and for taking up the challenge at such a time as this, where we are confronted with varying degrees of threats and challenges, while at the same time aspire to transform and modernize our nation state. It calls for and demands good leadership. And being Fiji's youngest president and a high chief, his able leadership and wisdom will be an essential ingredient in the continuation of the fundamental political transformation of our young, genuine democracy and realizing our true development and economic potentials. This is what the Honorable Prime Minister saw in this young chief and great leader, and to say yes to such a calling is utmost admirable and inspirational. Madam Speaker, it was His Excellency the President's maiden address to Parliament, delivered with humility, passion, empathy, and patriotism. He highlighted quite clearly to Fiji's premier decision-making institution and all Fijians the most critical challenges immediately facing our beloved nation. Challenges which will have a major impact on our future as a nation. However, Madam Speaker, it is most unfortunate that some members of this August Parliament continued with their usual rhetoric to criticize and oppose for the sake of opposing, because they are opposition members, rather than taking time to listen, digest, and analyze the general theme of His Excellency's address. Those who are quick to speak against His Excellency's address without caring to listen and be guided by the wisdom therein, unfortunately miss out on the lesson and direction it intended to convey. Madam Speaker, please allow me to refer to a few key statements made by His Excellency, which I personally believe will be helpful to every honorable member and likewise to every Fijian for now and in the years to come. His Excellency the President clearly outlined in his opening remarks and reminded us to guard closely the democracy created under our Fijian Constitution. He went on to state that although young, he had been in leadership long enough to see the difference between the genuine democracy we share today and past systems that fell short of delivering true equality for our people. I say that again. He had been in leadership long enough to see the difference between the genuine democracy we share today and past systems that fell short of delivering true equality for our people. What does that statement mean, Madam Speaker? To me, His Excellency is reminding us that previously we were a democracy but struggling with the crisis of inequality. I say that again. We were a democracy, but we were struggling with the crisis of inequality. And sorry to say, Madam Speaker, while this inequality issue was glaringly obvious and denied us progress, it suits the politics of old cared not to remove it at all. Why? Because it suits their purpose and political ideology. Ethnic politics occupied center stage, often prompting violent conflict and political changes, but unfortunately, these political changes were for their own benefit without addressing the core issue. I've always referred to the cobweb and the spider. Madam Speaker, we were just dusting off the cobwebs. But to get rid of the cobwebs, we need to kill the spider. That was is reminding us that he sees the preservation and the strengthening of our democratic society as his greatest responsibility as our president. What a powerful statement indeed. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, His Excellency has vowed to protect the flame of our young democracy from any and all who seek to extinguish it for personal or political purposes. This statement perhaps was not well received too from the opposition side, Madam Speaker, but His Excellency knows too well that as we are moving closer to elections, politicians and political parties still tethered to the past will exploit the opportunity to do so for their short-term political will and win. May I again quote the words of George Bernard Shaw: "Progress is impossible without change. People who cannot change their mind cannot change anything." Madam Speaker, let me go back to the statement that I have made earlier that Fiji needed a fundamental transformation because we were a democracy suffering from inequality crisis. This transformation came about as a result of the nationwide community consultation undertaken by the National Council for Building a Better Fiji through the State of the Nation and Economy Report and the People's Charter for Change, Peace and Progress under the then Bainimarama government. Again, based on our history, Madam Speaker, the People's Charter for Change, Peace and Progress reviewed our system of government, constitution, laws, economic resources development, leadership values, policies, and so forth. Fast forward, Madam Speaker, the 2013 Constitution and the 2014 general elections was the beginning of this new era for Fiji, embracing the concept of a common and equal citizenry because, again, according to His Excellency's address, our nation is home to a people who want stability and prosperity and who are wiser and more educated than ever before. This is not the 1900s. We are a great country, but held back by the politics of old. And His Excellency, in his gracious speech, is calling on us to continue to build our institutions and the ethos of equality and a strong nation state. Madam Speaker, as clearly outlined by His Excellency, the style of old politics has no place in the new Fiji. That is what the Fiji First government stands for, under the strong and visionary leadership of Prime Minister Bainimarama. Madam Speaker, let me talk about national security. His Excellency's acclaimed address is a call for solidarity, a call to bind forces to make the voiceless heard in the global arena, a call to protect the democratic frontier for the younger generation, a call for patriotism, and a call for unity to embrace challenges laid before all Fijians. Madam Speaker, as a nation, our greatest threat is climate change and more recently, the COVID-19 pandemic. And these issues concern people's lives. The other side of this parliament must understand that this is what we must not politicize because of the ramifications, Madam Speaker. Let me talk about the response to COVID-19. Fiji, Madam Speaker, is moving forward on the process of recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, and we need all Fijians to be vaccinated. It was a huge achievement for government to procure vaccines for all Fijians. Despite the major challenges, frontline workers have sacrificed a lot throughout the pandemic. We can only be safe when all Fijians are vaccinated. The message to those unvaccinated Fijians is simple: get vaccinated. Madam Speaker, the whole of government approach to confront and combat the deadly virus of COVID-19 has certainly brought positive results. This is evident by the improvement in our economic data, as stated by the Governor of the Reserve Bank of Fiji in his recent press release on 25th November. That economic performance has gradually improved, particularly in our forestry, mineral water, and energy sectors. This was coupled with a positive movement in domestic consumption, retail, and investment in October. Madam Speaker, this confirms that Fiji's economic conditions has improved, and it is in a better position compared to 5 months ago. I am sure that this is attributed to the improved business confidence both locally and abroad because of our post-COVID-19 strategies and policy interventions introduced by the Honourable Prime Minister. These initiatives, plus the many support programs announced in the government budget are directly contributing to our economic recovery and sets a good base for quick economic recovery and the future growth over the short to medium term. Madam Speaker, a few weeks back, we were fortunate to have with us Australia's Minister for International Development and the Pacific. And he quoted that Fiji's COVID-19 response measures was world-leading. Mr. Speaker, sir, that demonstrates that we, as a country, under the leadership of the Prime Minister, are faring well in the pandemic that is confronting us, Madam Speaker, sir. Madam Speaker, I acknowledge His Excellency's statement on the unwavering support tendered towards the vaccination drive throughout Fiji. The success rate of 90% achievement and reduction in hospitalization and deaths from COVID-19 is a show that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And such government intervention is visible with the international border reopening today. Madam Speaker, both my ministries, together with respective line agencies, namely the RFMF and the Fiji Police Force, will continue to rapidly adapt and align their operational postures and responses to protect all Fijians and promote economic security. On climate change, Madam Speaker, the climate crisis is clear. It is real. It is here. As I alluded to earlier, climate change is a matter of national security, so any responsible leader would understand that COP26 is a conference where we must make our voices heard amongst big global emitters. Madam Speaker, it is clear that none of the members, or I don't know how many from the other side, have been to a COP. I don't know how many have been to a COP meeting, Madam Speaker. They do not understand the scope of work required to attend a conference of such magnitude. Usually, COP delegations would comprise of leaders, ministers, senior and technical officials, negotiators, and we have non-government and civil society organizations and all interested stakeholders, Mr. Speaker, sir, who had all dynamic roles to play. Our delegations to these important international forums continue to be underrepresented, although we are the most vulnerable and on the front line facing the devastating impact of climate change. We need more voices, speaking and negotiating at these international forums to get what we want out of the international responses to a crisis which was not of our making. It is unfortunate, Madam Speaker, opposition members cannot understand this and have, instead of supporting our plight at COP26, have resorted to negatively criticizing the size of our delegation, which were unfairly outnumbered. The lives of all Fijians and our future generations will depend on the outcomes of these forums. Internationally, we need to be clearly seen, to engage, to be heard, in order to be heeded. Madam Speaker, why is the attendance of the Honourable Prime Minister and the delegation so important? I have before me what we call the Suva Declaration. This is a document by the leaders of all Pacific Island countries. We, the leaders of the Pacific Island Development Forum, following open, transparent and inclusive discussions with stakeholders undertaken during the Pacific Island Development Forum, third annual summit held in Suva, Fiji between 2nd to 4th September 2015, and it goes on, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, sir. But let me refer to paragraph 19. We, the leaders of the Pacific Island Development Forum, following consultation with an agreement of all stakeholders at the Pacific Island Development Forum, that summit therefore called for A, the 2015 Paris Climate Change Agreement to limit global average temperature increase to below 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels in order to transition towards decarbonization. Why is it important to the Pacific, Madam Speaker? The late Tony de Bruyn, Foreign Minister of Marshall Islands, his famous statement in COP was 1.5 to stay alive. Because if we don't get to 1.5, most of these low-lying islands, Madam Speaker, will be underwater in the next few years. And that is why our leaders must go to COP, Madam Speaker. And it was a great achievement. It was a win, particularly, because that 1.5 that was in the Suva Declaration went through AOCs, the Alliance of Small Island States, into the G77 plus China, and it found its way into the text of the Paris Agreement. Article 2 of the Paris Agreement. This agreement in enhancing blah, blah, blah. A, holding the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels and pursuing efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial level, Mr. Speaker. There was a compromise. You cannot go and win everything that you take to COP. There is a give and take when we do the negotiations, Mr. Speaker. I was there in that room in Paris in 2015. When our negotiators came back, we still wanted to get 1.5. But the negotiators gave their advice. It is a win already for AOCs. It is a win already for PCs. It is already a win for all vulnerable people. But the compromise is the 2 degrees and then work towards the 1.5. We don't just make a statement or a declaration and sit here in the Pacific and hope that things will happen, Madam Speaker. We have to be there. We have to be heard. We have to be represented because Paris Agreement is about human life. Human life is a human right, Madam Speaker. We have a right to life. And any national leader will not just sit here and hope that things will happen. It is the biggest threat to national security. And it must be a concern to a national leader and those aspiring to be national leaders. Madam Speaker, let me quote the opinion by the former president of the NFP. Yesterday, we were given the definition of dictatorship and dictators, but she defined intellectuals. The term intellectual in the dictionary means a learned person, a thinker, an intellectual that will think about an issue, the pros and cons, and set out those to make up their own minds. Thinkers do not just oppose an idea for the sake of opposing, no matter how good or probably possibly good it is. A thinker will offer suggestions and solutions to improve an idea that has been put forward by another or the government, so that the idea is made much better, also that governance is improved and is much better for the greatest number of citizens. Unfortunately, partisan politics overtakes the greater good for the super intellectuals, and so everything that comes from the other side or suspect must be drowned or snuffed. Let me go on to highlight about her comments about COP26. This is the leader of the Hope Party, former president of the National Federation Party. Since COP26 is currently in progress in Glasgow, let's take a look at how the super thought leaders behind the opposition parties have addressed the related and very important issues of climate change and Fiji's part in finding solutions. I assumed that since climate change involves the survival of the human race, the super thought leaders will try thinking and offering substantive policy ideas and alternatives for the Fijian government to adopt and take away with them to Glasgow. I was wrong. Partisan politics was on full display from them through the last 2 years of COVID-19. And so climate change was going to be no different, be it human survival or Fijian survival. Partisan politics was going to be propelled at force from that end of the political spectrum, come what may. And so we can see in their newspaper articles, Facebook and Twitter posts, their offering on climate change largely flows between, listen to this, Madam Speaker, complaints, sarcasm, sneering, petty, and then come back to complaining. Substantive policy ideals and commentary on climate change of our climate change legislation, nil. The first unthinking complaint, and we only have room to focus on one complaint in this article, was about the number of the Fijian delegation to COP26. That very much summarizes the mentality on the other side of the House, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are in the cyclone season. Let me end, Madam Speaker. We are in the cyclone season. Please, let's prepare for the cyclone season. The forecast has already been given. We might expect 3 to 6 to pass over the region, and probably, let's pray that it doesn't come Fiji's way, maybe 3. But let's not only focus on the cyclones, Madam Speaker. It's El Nino season, La Nina season. Sorry, Madam Speaker. Let's expect a lot of rainfall. Madam Speaker, as rightfully said by His Excellency, the future of Fiji is worth fighting for. Therefore, the work of climate action is a coalition of all Fijians, irrespective of our age, gender, or ethnicity. We don't need the devastation of severe weather conditions to separate us from our existence, but we count our actions to keep the faith that our children and grandchildren will have a brighter future. Madam Speaker, last but not the least, I reiterate my congratulations to His Excellency for his inauguration, and also commend Major General retired Yoshikunis Konrate for successfully setting a high, exemplary, selfless service to Fiji, the region, and the global community during his presidency. Finally, Madam Speaker, I take this time to convey my best wishes to the 50 RFMF troops that were deployed to the Solomon Islands on Monday, led by Lieutenant Colonel Aseli Tony Kevin. This is our commitment to supporting our Pacific Island neighbors during times of crisis, as we stand in solidarity with the government and the people of the Solomon Islands. Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to address this August Parliament in support of His Excellency's most gracious speech for the opening of this new Parliament session. May I also take this opportunity to wish you and all honourable members a blessed Christmas and a prosperous and safe 2022. And may God bless our nation.
I thank the Minister for Defence, National Security and Policing, Rural and Maritime Development and Disaster Management, the Honourable Inia Seruiratu, for his contribution. Now I call upon the Honourable Linda Tambuya to take the floor.